Welcome, Channel 63 viewers. I'm Bob Langer, and I'm here with another segment of Antiques, Art, and Valuables. We have a very special segment to offer you. I'm here today at the Norton Museum with Miss Laurie Barnes, the Elizabeth McGraw Curator of Chinese Art. Welcome, and thank you for being so gracious to allow us into your home.
Thank you. Do you want to have a look around and
I
see
think that's a great idea.
Some of the masterworks in our collection?
Well, each piece is a masterwork, and I'm sure will be in your excellent hands when you show us
why don't I
these
show
pieces.
you some of the pieces that shouldn't be missed when you come to the Norton.
Excellent idea. We are here in another room where there's a beautiful collection of jades, which I understand was the innovation of Mr. Norton, who collected jades, and this was the first part of the museum collection. The museum has a marvelous collection, and probably the best collection in the United States of jades, which I have seen. And Laurie, there's another special piece I'd like you to comment on.
This piece is one of the masterworks in the collection, the Norton's collection of late jades and hardstones, which is on display in this gallery. It was made for the Qianlong Emperor, who was the wealthiest and most famous man of the 18th century. He was very passionate about Buddhism, and this bowl depicts the 7 Buddhas of the past. It was created in 1777, and it was part of an exchange of gifts between the Panchen Lama of Tibet, who was the Qianlong Emperor's spiritual advisor, and there is a similar bowl to this, not in spinach green jade like this one, but in white jade in the palace, in the Summer Palace in Beijing. All of the pieces that you see in this case were made for the Qianlong Emperor at his request. What happened after this bowl was made in 1777, gifts continued to be exchanged between the Qianlong Emperor and the Panchen Lama of Tibet, which culminated in the Panchen Lama coming to the Qianlong Emperor's 70th birthday celebration, which, according to all accounts, was one of the most magnificent birthday celebrations that the world has ever seen.
I think now we will follow you to coincide with other pieces which have something to do with this particular piece of jade.
Why don't we go from here, which were Mr. Norton's first pieces acquired in the 1940s, to what he acquired in the 1950s.
Wonderful. Thank you. Laurie, tell us something about how Mr. Norton acquired these early bronzes and jades, as well as the significance of animal figures in the jades and on the bronzes itself. What did that delineate during that period of time?
Well, first of all, Mr. Norton in the 1950s allied himself with a very famous Paris dealer by the name of C.T. Liu. And C.T. Liu and Mr. Norton put together an exhibition of early jade and bronzes, and they borrowed from various collections and also from C.T. Liu's stock. And most of what you see in this gallery today is what was in that exhibition in the early 50s and Mr. Norton purchased for the museum. They're important today because of the time and the method that they were acquired, so we've got this really great provenance on the pieces, but there are also some really wonderful jade and bronze animal forms. Particularly with the jades, both bronze and jade were considered to be luxury items. In the instance of jade, which was even more important than bronze, it was believed to have protective powers. Animals were also believed to have protective powers. One of the most important animals was the sunbird, which later turned into the phoenix. And the other counterpart to the phoenix was the dragon, which rose from the water or the oceans in the springtime to the heavens, ascended to the heavens to give spring rain. And in an agrarian society like China, that was very important. So in people's lives, if you were a wealthy person, the ruler of an area might bestow jade on a subject that performed some kind of meritorious service. They would have been worn as jewelry and objects of status and power in life. And then in the tomb, you find jade being used as a form of protection. Humans were considered to be very vulnerable when they made their way from the earthly realm to the heavenly realm, and they needed that extra protection. So you have, there's 3 jade suits. We don't have one here, but inside those jade suits that still exist, you see many of the objects that you see in this gallery, like the dragon pendants, like the animal pendants, and they would have been found on necklaces. And some of the other forms of jade in this objects, like the discs and the square tubes, would have been ritual objects. Confucius says that in talking about, he set up this philosophy of how man should deal with their fellow man. And one of the things he says that ritual is really meant in his time to worship the ancestors with jade. So some of the objects that you see in this gallery are of that type too.
Now I think we're going to walk to one of the most interesting pieces in the collection, and perhaps one of the most important. That wonderful vase depicting a scholar, his friend, and a zither.
Well, I'm not sure that it's the most important, but it is an object that had been in storage for a very long time that has a very interesting story that has just been discovered.
Okay. Laurie, you have in your collection one of the most important Ming Dynasty brush pots in existence. Please tell our viewers something about it.
Well, at the time that this brush pot was created in the early 17th century, China, the Ming Dynasty was crumbling. And so the imperial kilns ceased to exist. So the potters at Jingdezhen, where the imperial kiln was located in South China, were looking for new patrons. And one of their new patrons was the scholar class. So what you see on this jar for either holding scroll paintings in a scholar's studio, or brushes that the scholar would have actually used to write letters or paint with, you have this masterfully painted scene. And right now we're focusing on the story on this scene. And after this special installation that deals with stories in Chinese art ends, this piece will go back to its permanent, more or less permanent spot in the galleries, which deals with objects for the scholar's studio. And this, the story on this vessel deals with the legendary Emperor Yao offering his throne to the sage Xu You. And Xu You refused because he said that if people overstepped their stations in life, then the people would suffer, which was a very important topic at that period of time in the 17th century when the Ming Dynasty was crumbling and eventually fell to the Manchus of the Qing Dynasty.
And while we're on the subject of the Ming Dynasty, I think we should move over to the wonderful large cabinets
from the Qing Dynasty.
From the Qing Dynasty.
Yeah.
Lori, we've gone from some very esoteric pieces of Chinese art to the lacquerware cabinets. I'd like you to tell our viewers about them.
This pair of cabinets at the Norton they are the best of their type still in existence. They were created during the reign of the Kangxi Emperor in the 17th century, maybe early 18th century. The Kangxi Emperor was the grandfather to the Qianlong Emperor, who the jade bowl that we first spoke about was made for. These pieces, unlike the jade bowl that were actually made for the emperor, these pieces weren't made for the emperor. They're big, they're grand, but they're clearly for somebody that had imperial aspirations, but not imperial. So they're big and bold. They're probably, because they're so colorful, they were probably made for the women's quarters in the household, perhaps of a wealthy merchant. So they were the nouveau riche of the time, but they, as everyone wanted to, in Chinese society, wanted to emulate, as today, the emperor or scholars. That's what's going on with these cabinets.
And how significant are the designs of dragons and flowers and homes of people having tea or playing in the garden?
Well, one of the panels on this shows a important story from history of a scholar who tried to preserve all the books when the emperor wanted to burn them. So they're acknowledging that history is important. But there's also dragons and phoenixes. Mm-hmm. Again, we talked about the protective power of those things. So you see with these pieces lots of symbols of good fortune used as decoration, as you see in many of the pieces in
Lori,
the gallery.
It has been such a pleasure, and I hope our viewers will enjoy this visit as much as I have. Incidentally, for our viewers, the Norton Museum on every Saturday, the first Saturday of each month, there's free admission. There's something for everyone. There's European art on the third floor, American art on the first floor, and Chinese art on our floor, and thank you all very much.
And if you join the Norton, you can come every Thursday night and anytime you want for free. I think it's one of the best entertainment values around.
Thank you so much.